Hello, my name is Courtney Hines, owner of Cad Company. The purpose of this video is to show the key adjustment points on the quadrajet carburetor for those not familiar with them. We're going to start out with the hot idle adjustment screw. Right here. It is quite obvious on the driver's side. Now keep in mind, the only time you use this screw here is when the choke is off and the fast idle cam is off. If you're putting a new carburetor on or having or breaking in a new engine, you're probably going to have to come back to this adjustment a few times. The main purpose when you first get one started up is crank it in far enough to keep the engine running. Let me zoom in a little bit. If you ever have to rebuild your carburetor or get a kit for it, the number you'll need is on the side right here. That's what all the parts houses are going to be looking for. Now if you've gotten to a hot idle situation where the choke is off and you can't seem to bring the idle speed down, check the secondaries here. You just reach behind them, give them a little push forward. If they're hanging open a little bit, it's probably because the carburetor had been over tightened or is got a rough spot somewhere holding it open. But one of the major causes for that hanging open is the carburetor being over tightened. Here's one of your air mixture screws for the idle. There's one on each side. A lot of times they're a double D or a 1/4 inch hex, or sometimes just a straight screwdriver slot. A good starting point is once you have lightly seated it, don't crank down hard on them, but run them all the way in lightly and then back them out 2 to 2.5 turns. Quadrajets have a real fine taper on the needles, and the adjustment is not super sensitive like other carburetors. Now you're only going to want to adjust these once, again, the choke is wide open and if you think you have a problem with it. Now one way to tell if it's too lean is by shutting the choke slightly and seeing if the RPM raises. All you have to do is once the choke is open, just shut it a little bit with your finger or even cup your hand over the top. If by choking it the engine RPM comes up, that means you're running too lean, and you can back these screws out a bit until you quit gaining RPM. Generally you want to back the screws out until you get your maximum RPM, and then you may want to run it in, say, 1/8 to 1/4 of a turn. Here's your other air mixture screw here. Now the fuel inlet, as it says on the carburetor, there's a filter in there. It's generally a paper filter, about a 2-inch long one, and if you're ever in doubt, if you're getting debris in there, you can take that filter out and you can hold it up to a light, see if you can see light through it. Or they're so inexpensive, we usually you can just open them up with your fingers and stretch them out and see what kind of debris has been coming up through your fuel lines. Okay, here we are on the choke side of the carburetor. This is the electric choke unit. I loosened it up to give you an idea how it works. When it gets cold, the spring winds up and it shuts the choke, see? And as it heats up, it unwinds and opens the choke. Now the original equipment ones usually had a notch or a mark on the plastic to correspond with these little hash marks here. And in rebuild kits, they generally had a chart that told you what direction to go. Like say 2 notches rich would be here, 2 notches lean would be here. But if the choke housing has been replaced, they generally don't have a mark on them. So you're basically, when it's cold, you're wanting to set it to where the choke shuts, and then as the engine warms up, you need to make sure that it fully stands open. It might take a little bit to get that adjustment right, but it's not hard. And if you're rebuilding the carb, a lot of the kits will have a gasket that fits right behind here. Do not use it, because that's where the coil gets its ground. If you put a gasket behind this housing, the electric choke won't work at all. Now, I don't know if you can see this here. This is the fast idle cam. You'll watch it go down and then up. When the choke shuts, the fast idle cam is raised. And the only thing, once the coil unwinds, it's just gravity that lets it fall off of there. See, I picked it up and it's just going to fall down. Now I'll show you a picture in a minute here of the actual fast idle adjustment, which is under here. That cam has notches on it underneath, and there's a screw adjustment that gives you your fast idle adjustment. Now this part here is called a choke pull-off. This is the primary choke pull-off. When the choke is shut and the engine starts, vacuum will suck this arm back, and you can see the choke open. Now you just want it opening about that amount, or if the choke doesn't open, the engine's just gonna stumble and die. Now there's an adjustment right here, generally a Phillips screw, with a little arm on there, and you'll be able to see, you can usually, even with the engine turned off, you can push this back with your finger and you can adjust that screw to where you get the opening you want. There again, on a cold start, when you think you got everything right, when it comes up on fast idle, you can with your finger kind of open or shut the choke and get a good idea if it wants to be richer or leaner just by the sound of the engine. I mean, this is for guys that don't have air fuel mixture machines, emission machines and things like that. The guys that are working at home, that works fine. Just listen to your engine. It'll tell you what it wants. Some of these engines, or carburetors rather, have a secondary pull-off too. I'll try to get you a picture of it over here. This is it here. Now the linkage on it, the only adjustment on that, you just have to bend the linkage. There again, a lot of the carburetors do not have this one on it, and they don't need it on there. It's just kind of backup for this front one here. There's also another arm. If you look down in there, it's for the choke unloader. So when the choke is shut, and say you think you flooded the engine, instead of having to get out there and open the choke by hand or putting a screwdriver in it or whatever, if you open the throttle all the way, see it kicks it open by itself. If you look down in this area, you'll see a little arm that contacts the fast idle cam and such, and the only adjustment for that is just bending it, but usually they don't need any attention at all. Okay, this is the fast idle cam adjustment here. This is only used when the choke is on and that fast idle cam is in the raised position. Generally, when that fast idle cam is in the top position, you're looking for an idle RPM of somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000. And then you can take with your finger and you can push down on it, and it will kick the throttle all the way down. Now that's what I was talking about earlier too. on your regular hot idle adjustment. If the idle does not want to come down, always reach over here and check and see if that cam is all the way down. Like I was saying, it's only gravity that allows them to drop. Sometimes they get dirty and you'll need to take a little carb cleaner and hose them down till they move freely. Okay, these are the secondaries here. If you want to check full throttle on your engine, of course engine off, you're going to have to open these manually and look down bottom at the throttle blades, you know, in the throttle plate down under, to see if they're wide open. That's the only way you'll be able to see if they're open or not. As you can see, when the throttle goes wide open, these are pulled open slowly with engine vacuum. Okay, this here is the rod hanger. There's 2 metering rods hooked onto it. Each one of these hangers has a letter code on it. It denotes how high or low the rods are sitting in the holes down in the main body. They don't have a jet per se. It's just a hole in the main body. The primaries have jets though. Now the adjustment for this throttle plate here is inside this hole here. There's a straight blade screw. Now there is a lock, Allen headed lock screw underneath, so you won't be able to turn that unless you loosen the lock screw. Most throttles, secondary throttle plates are just fine and you don't have to mess with them. You want a little bit of tension on them so that they will shut. Now if they're set too loose, they'll flop open and you'll get a bog. If you really feel the engine accelerating quick, you hear people say, I really felt the 4-barrel come on. Well, if you feel it coming on, you're probably experiencing a slight bog before it comes on, which means this adjustment screw is too loose and you need to tighten them up so it'll come on smoother. On the other hand, if it's too tight, it'll never pull open. So most of the time they're set just right from the factory and you never have to mess with them. When the secondary throttle plates are open, the top butterflies of the secondary will slowly open, being pulled open by engine vacuum. As they open, you'll see the hanger that holds the rods will be lifted up to enrich the secondaries. Now there should be light spring tension on the butterfly flap here. There is an adjustment screw through this hole, which you can see, but you can't turn it until you unlock. There's a set screw underneath that keeps people from just cranking on them. You'll have to back that off a little to adjust this. Normally you never have to mess with this adjustment. If it's too loose, you're going to want to crank it a little tighter. If the secondaries open too fast, you will get a bog. For them to be working properly, you shouldn't even feel them come on. It should be nice, slow transition. Consequently, if they don't ever open up, your spring pressure is too tight. To check full throttle opening of the secondary throttle blades, you're going to have to just hold open the top butterflies and look down to see if they're there, standing wide open. Now, if they haven't moved, make sure the choke is off, because these carbs come originally equipped with a secondary lockout. This one has had it removed, which many have. You don't really need them. But if yours still has one, when the choke is on, there's an arm that catches this little rod sticking out, and will lock out the secondaries from opening. So if you go full throttle on the linkage side and you look down the butterflies and your secondaries haven't opened, look and see if this may be the problem. If you can't get your engine to idle and you're sure it's a lean problem by, like say, either choking it slightly and it smooths out, it's usually due to some debris or some kind of slime from the fuel in the tank making its way up and past the filter and into the carburetor. Couple things you can do. One, you can remove the air mixture screws, and you can take a little shot of carb cleaner and blast through the hole, and then take some air pressure and give it short little bursts, and then put your screws back in and see if that does it. If not, another trick to try, and these are without taking the carburetor apart, is with the engine running, you're going to bring the RPM up with the throttle up to say 3,000 RPM. And then when it's steady at 3,000, what you're going to do is slam the choke shut and open the throttle more. What that's going to do is create a lot of vacuum on the carburetor, and it's going to try to suck whatever it is plugging the passages on through. Now the engine is going to really choke out and the RPM is going to come way down, but just before it dies, let go of the choke, let the choke open up, and then you'll probably have to rev it a little to get it cleared out. That seems to work quite often on them. So, like I say, these two things you can try without having to disassemble the carburetor.